The Doctor in the TARDIS. Next stop, everywhere.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Charles Skaggs, back in the TARDIS, ready to talk some Eighth Doctor with my wonderful partner in time and slightly happier political junkie, Jesse Jackson. How you doing, Jesse?
Yes, Charles, it's amazing what a week can be. How much things can change. Yes, I am thrilled to be talking Paul McGann. I am thrilled that the results are in. Last Wednesday, you got me off the edge, Cliff. You're like, let's talk Doctor Who, Jesse. It's going to be okay. So what a great way to celebrate. And we have one of our favorite guest companions joining us.
Exactly. So we heard her last week when we talked Dragonfire, but of course, thankfully, she decided to put up with our nonsense once more and came back for a second week. So please welcome back everyone to Next Stop Everywhere, Holly Mack from the Five-ish Fangirls podcast. How you doing, Holly?
Yay!
Doing good. Doing good. Thanks, Charles. Jesse. Glad to be back.
Well, we love having you back. We're so glad that you were able to have an opening in your schedule so that you can join us for this episode, because here at episode 208, we're going to be talking Storm Warning, the very first Eighth Doctor audio adventure from Big Finish Productions, all the way back in 2001, which means Paul McGann's been doing these for Big Finish at least 19 years.
That's awesome.
Which is fantastic. Mm-hmm. Fantastic. And it's a fun little audio, not to mention that we also get the introduction of India Fisher as his first audio adventure companion, Charley Pollard, an Edwardian adventuress. And we're very glad to talk about that. So I'm definitely glad to talk about it with you, Jesse, and Holly. And Holly, I want to give you a little bit of props because your podcast that you're on, the Five-ish Fangirls podcast, just celebrated its 300th episode.
Yes, it did.
Congratulations.
Yes, it did.
That's a great
milestone.
you.
Nice. Congratulations.
Yes.
Well, we're only on 208, so we're going to get there eventually.
You're getting there.
We're getting there,
but you'll get there.
Just leave things set up for us, and we'll kind of tidy up after you leave.
Yep.
But we'll get there eventually. A little slow and steady wins the race, right?
Yes.
So we'll get there.
Yes.
But I just want to give a shout out to you and Rachel and the others for this amazing accomplishment, because I know at least have some small idea of the effort that goes into making 300 episodes. So I just want to give you guys your props.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I know anytime, I believe we've talked about this, I know, on other shows, but Terry Smith, who was on the podcast with me on Set Lusting Bruce, when he was talking about getting into podcast, he attended a master's class there in England, and they said that most podcasts do not get past 7 episodes. And when you think about that, to reach 200, 300 or more is a testament to your commitment, how much you love the subject, and just perseverance. So well done.
Exactly. So congratulations again. And hopefully we'll be talking with Rachel again sometime, hopefully soon. We definitely would love to have her back. I'm kind of like indirectly in negotiations through DJ Nick with her because trying to get her back on and let her know that, yes, we want her back. Just kind of reach out there and let her know that she's more than welcome to come back. So hopefully we can make that happen, at least in 2021, maybe. All right. So like I said, we're talking here at episode 28. We're talking Storm Warning. This was written by Alan Barnes, who wrote the Doctor Who animated special, The Infinite Quest, which featured, I believe, David Tennant as the 10th Doctor and Freema Agyeman as Martha Jones.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty notable there. And he also wrote the Big Finish Audio's Neverland, Zagreus, Death in Blackpool, and Heroes of Santar, and a bunch of others. And this was directed by Gary Russell, who wrote the Doctor Who novels, Legacy, The Scales of Injustice, and Business Unusual, among others. And for Big Finish, he directed the stories Spare Parts, which is a very notable story, great one with the Fifth Doctor, and the Origin of the Cybermen.
Yes.
And also the nice little trilogy of Omega, Davros, and the Master.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a great one for the 5th, 6th, and 7th Doctors.
Yes.
And like I said, this was the very first 8th Doctor audio adventure, starring, of course, the great Paul McGann as the 8th Doctor in his first reprisal of the character ever since the 1996 TV movie. So this is Paul coming off a 5-year hiatus as the Doctor. And like I said, introducing, of course, India Fisher as Charley Pollard. And then definitely looking forward to getting your thoughts. Holly, since you're our special guest, I want to just ask you first, I gather you had listened to this audio before, and you were a fan of this, which is why you wanted to talk about it?
Yes, big time. Out of the companions for Paul McGann that he has, Lucy Miller's good, but there's just something about Charley that just kind of sticks. No, it just sticks with you. And I'm just like, I want to go back and revisit this.
So you're of the camp that you prefer Charley to Lucy Miller.
If push came to shove, I'm more Charlotte than Lucy. I mean, Lucy's good.
Okay.
But if I had my choice, I'm going to pull up Charley. Story.
Okay. Do you identify more with Charley?
I don't know. It's just something about her character that just intrigues me.
Okay.
As we'll discuss, I don't want to jump the gun too much.
We'll get there.
I know we're going to be discussing.
I think I know what you're hinting at, but we'll get there. If that's what indeed what you're getting at. I'm a Lucy Miller fan, but I love Charley as well. So, I'm definitely nothing against Charley, because this actually, a little bit of trivia of my own, this was the very first Big Finish audio that I ever purchased, because Paul McGann was returning as the 8th Doctor. This is what got me into Big Finish.
So I was going to ask that, Charles.
Yeah.
So you kind of gave me
set you up.
If you could go in the TARDIS or the Wayback Machine, there was a lot of excitement. I'm thinking about Big Finish audios, but did this bring it to another level?
Well, yeah.
The idea we're getting the 8th Doctor that had only been in the TV movie, and all of a sudden we're going to include this in canon, and we're going to get this great actor reprising the role. Did this bring it up to 11?
Well, yeah. We've talked about this before, that if for everyone that remembers, if you're old enough, older than dirt like me that remembers, that back in 2001, as far as we were concerned, the show was gone. We had all our hopes pinned on maybe the show returning in '96 with the TV movie, but because of bad scheduling on Fox's part in the United States, and a rather great but not too great reception in the UK, we didn't get any more. That was it. It was just a TV movie and done. And as far as we knew, that was it. We weren't going to get any more. And then when we got word finally that McGann was going to be coming to Big Finish, and keep in mind, this has been after, a couple years of only having the 5th, 6th, and 7th Doctors, Peter Davison, Colin Baker, Sylvester McCoy, contributing to Big Finish, which was still, like I said, pretty in their infancy. I don't believe, if I recall correctly, the Big Finish didn't really start doing the Doctor Who audios until '99, if I'm not mistaken, with Sirens of Time.
That's about right.
Okay.
Which we've talked about on the podcast, but it's very, very early, very kind of still in their infancy as a production company, doing these Doctor Who audios. So obviously, you know, with no show, we're still in the wilderness years. Fans were desperate, grasping for any continuation of the show. So as far as at least I was concerned, and I'm sure a lot of other Doctor Who fans were concerned, this audio right here, Storm Warning, was the official continuation of the show. Because we had no idea that the TV series would be coming back. We still didn't get the announcement of Modern Who's return until 2003. So, to put everything in context,
Sure, that's what I was thinking. Right?
So this was just like, yes, the show is surviving, albeit in audio form. But thankfully, McGann's reprising the Eighth Doctor, which a lot of us, I think, you know, especially me being a McGann fan, I was very grateful for it because it kind of gave McGann's Doctor more legitimacy. Some fans, some Doctor Who fans were kind of dismissive that, oh, well, even though there was a regeneration sequence, some of them didn't really see McGann as the Doctor for some strange reason. And so, probably because there was no TV series that followed the TV movie. But this, you know, this was an official sanctioned by the BBC continuation. So, it's, you know, I think it gave a little more credibility to his Doctor that we really didn't get again until when McGann reprised the Eighth Doctor in Night of the Doctor in the 50th anniversary specials.
So, a couple things that I think is interesting, right, is I imagine a lot of people thought of this TV movie the same way they thought that really bad couple of movies that we watched early, right? That were the Doctor Who that weren't in canon, right?
We've only watched Doctor Who and the Daleks. We'd only talked about that one here. We still have Daleks Invasion of Earth 2150.
Yeah.
In case anybody wants to join us for that one.
Yeah.
I'm just putting that out there.
I remember.
Just came out on Blu-ray, you guys.
I was excited to watch this, and then afterward she said, "You warned me. Are you sure?" It just seemed like, "Oh yeah, how bad can it be?" And like, oh, but
anyway, so I think they probably considered McGann more canon than Cushing because, hey, at least Sylvester McCoy regenerated into McGann in the TV movie.
And then there's the little quibble with that one line with him being supposedly half human, half Time Lord. It's like, okay, that's a throwaway line, guys. Remember, the Doctor lies.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Rule 1, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think too many fans fixated on that. Like, that was their justification for not considering McGann the Doctor.
Yeah.
And now looking back here from 2020, it seems pretty foolish, right?
Exactly. And I do know, and I've shared this with you before, Charles, when I was lucky enough a few years ago to talk to Paul McGann for Comic Palooza, he talked about doing the Big Finish audios helped him stay in character. So when they reached out to him to do this, and remember, this was a huge shock to us. I mean, when
you're talking his return in the Night of the Doctor.
I mean, when we heard that, I remember being in the morning, right? This is, you know, before I'm going to work, and he goes, "Oh, I'm the Doctor, but maybe not the one you're expecting or whatever." And you're like, "Holy yes, holy yes, holy yes."
Exactly. I was doing the Doctor dance scene from the movie when he got the shoes. I'm just like, I know that voice. They went there.
Yeah, when I saw that the Night of the Doctor, you know, and I was watching that for the first time, I was just so ecstatic.
Yes.
I was so happy and really glad to see him back. And thankfully he still continues to work with Big Finish.
Yes.
So Jesse, since this is, I'm guessing, your first time listening to this story, what's your general thoughts? What was your general reaction before we get into our deep dive?
First off, I loved it. It's great, but a couple things struck me out. One, Paul McGann is so likable as the Doctor and just so comfortable. I have a few quibbles, but they're mostly just tongue-in-cheek. But the other thing is, this is actually a pretty complicated story for an audio story, right? Like often, and I'm not complaining at all. Often the audio dramas are pretty special, you know, kind of ABC plots. They're enjoyable. You get to spend time with the Doctor. This one was pretty complicated, and like we're gonna throw it all out there, and we're going to do this the Doctor deserves a great story. If we're going to do Paul McGann, we're going to do this right, and I just really enjoyed that.
This is one that you really can't toss on in the background for background noise and follow the storyline. You need to be focused and paying attention, because there's little minutia. Because there was one point where my mind started wanting, like, okay, got to back up again.
Well, there are a lot of characters, and we'll run them down here shortly. And obviously, you've got a new companion being introduced. The 8th Doctor is back at long last. So there's a lot to take in. At least there was for me when I received this in the mail. And I have to point this out, that way back in ye olden days of 2001, we didn't have the spiffy digital downloads.
No, we didn't.
Now, I had to order this from Big Finish's website, and because they didn't have these things, like they didn't have a United States distributor that was nice and handy, I had to wait for that to be shipped overseas. So eagerly waiting like a month for this thing to finally arrive in my mailbox. And, I take it out of the wrapper, and it's got all the international postage on it, and I'm just like excited by that. I was so excited to get this. So it's kind of nice to go back and kind of be reminded of this feeling that I had back when I first got the story, and how important it felt to me that Doctor Who was continuing.
Yeah, that's awesome, because you think about it in context, no thought about the 2005 reboot. This may be the only new Doctor Who we ever get is radio dramas, and maybe the occasional paperback book that's based on older episodes, right? I guess Doctor Who Magazine was still doing stuff, but... Yeah,
Doctor Who Magazine was doing the comic strips, and there were Doctor Who novels. Particularly the New Adventures, the Missing Adventures from Target and whatnot, and Virgin, but these, the audios, it was, you were able to hear the Doctor, and so it kind of mattered more, I think, a little bit in a weird way that because you had the actual actor playing the Doctor, that it felt more like Doctor Who. It's, obviously not as good as a TV episode would have been, but it's like the next best thing, right? So,
absolutely.
And the nice thing is you didn't have a budget to hold you back. Hey, we want to do this on this space planet or space station with these X number looking aliens. We don't have to worry.
Well, and this story is a great example of that, because you got, the R101, which probably would have cost a lot to construct. Now, probably you would have done a lot of it with CGI, but, and you had all the cast and everything, and you obviously had, the Engineer Prime and the Uncreator Prime and the whole Triskeli thing, and how that, as you're listening to it, you kind of picture it in your head a little bit. And I think that it's one of the advantages that Big Finish has is that, well, the only budget limitation they have is your imagination.
Yes.
So that when you're listening to these audios, you can picture it as spectacularly as you want. And, it obviously doesn't cost you anything extra, right? So in this story, I think takes advantage of that in a lot of ways. All right. Guest cast this time. We had Gareth Thomas as Lord Tamworth, and he was previously in a Torchwood episode, Ghost Machine, as Ed Morgan. Then he also played a character named Astaroth Morax in another Big Finish audio from the 4th Doctor called Last of the Colophon. And he's notable by playing a character named Kalendorf in a 7th Doctor audio, Return of the Daleks, and also the Dalek Empire series from Big Finish Productions.
And his voice acting, I forgot, and he almost sounds like Colin Baker, but I'm just like, wait a minute, is Colin Baker doing a guest role and they aren't publicizing it and he's playing a different character?
So you thought it was a pseudonym?
Oh, yeah.
That's
Until I did the research and found out, no, it's not him.
Yeah, and I have to mention this for John Takis because Gareth Thomas also, of course, played Raj Blake on Blake 7. And I'm sure John will be all over me if I don't mention that, because he's a huge Blake Seven geek. So I respect that. So there you go, John. You got your Blake Seven nod for the episode. We also had Nicholas Pegg as Lieutenant Colonel Frayling, or Lieutenant Commander, depending on your point of view. He's notable, Nicholas Pegg, because he plays a Dalek. He's one of the Dalek operators in the modern era. And he's also did the voice of Captain Ashford in a Colin Baker story, The Spectre of Lanyon Moor, which featured, Nicholas Courtney as the Brigadier. Mm-hmm. We finally got that long-awaited Sixth Doctor and the Brig story from Big Finish Productions. He also played a character named Mentos, like Mentos the Fresh Maker, in a Sixth Doctor audio, The One Doctor. He played a character named Cellarat in a Seventh Doctor story called Robophobia recently, among others. We had Hilton Collins as Chief Steward Weeks, who I thought kind of sounds a little bit like Paul McGann doing a voice. If you kind of listen to it, like he's trying to play some big, rough, kind of gruff guy. But it sounded to me originally like, maybe was McGann doing a second voice in this, but apparently it's an actor named Hilton Collins. So I learned something today. And he was in a Fifth Doctor audio called Red Dawn, which featured the return of the Ice Warriors, playing a character named Stast. Because, of course, it's Ice Warriors, they hiss all the time. He also played a character named Mendak in a Seventh Doctor audio, Return of the Daleks, and also a character named Vol in an Eighth Doctor audio, Sword of Orion, which is one that just follows Storm Warning, interestingly enough. Helen Goldwyn played one of the Triskeli, and she played a character named Chev in an Eighth Doctor audio, Sword of Orion, once again. Professor Crane, she played in a War Doctor Big Finish audio, The Shadow Vortex. And she also played the dual roles of Alice Aiken and, let's see if Jesse remembers this name, Fumafujium in the 10th Doctor audio adventure, The Creeping Death.
Bless
when
you.
We talked about that here on the podcast. Yes. You remember Fumafujium?
I do.
Yep. Everybody, I think, was kind of stunned because I was the only one who can pronounce it, if I recall correctly. Fumafujium. Barnaby Edwards played Peter Rathbone in the story, and he's also notable because he's also a Dalek operator in the modern era. So we had two Dalek operators, not to mention, Nicholas Briggs loitering around, the voice of the Daleks in the modern era. But it's kind of interesting because they didn't become Dalek operators until after this. So it's kind of interesting that two voice actors in this story become Dalek operators on the TV series in 2005 and onward. And he also played a vicar in Fifth Doctor audio, The Eternal Summer, which I just listened to recently. Character named Digley in Sword of Orion. Sword of Orion getting a lot of nods in this one. And also Arverton in another War Doctor audio, his very first, The Innocent, which we've talked about here on the podcast. So a lot of great guest cast in this one. A lot of interesting voice actors. And let's go to trivia, unless anybody has any other comments about the cast. All right. So trivia. This release features one of my all-time favorite theme arrangements of the Doctor Who theme. And I love Paul McGann's version, in these Eighth Doctor audios. I fell in love with it instantly when I heard it. I thought it was so cool. I still love it to this day. It was composed by David Arnold, who, as we've talked about numerous James Bond connections on this podcast, was, of course, the composer of the movies Tomorrow Never Dies, The World Is Not Enough, Die Another Day, Casino Royale, and Quantum of Solace. So 5 Bond films right there. He was also the composer in the BBC TV series Sherlock, and also did the Good Omens miniseries score.
Wow, that's impressive.
pretty solid composer as far as I'm concerned. I love his, I've got a lot of his soundtracks, just a very fun, if you remember that great Good Omens theme recently, that's David Arnold right there. So he's the guy who composed the Sherlock theme, and Paul McGann's Eighth Doctor theme on top of Good Omens. So I thought that was rather cool. Had to mention that, of course. Also, the Doctor states several times that there were no survivors of the R101 crash that happened on October 5th, 1930. But actually, there were. Apparently 8 people survived the crash itself, but 2 of those later died from injuries sustained in the crash, reducing the number of survivors to 6. So that's the real story. So Doctor Who taking some creative license, I guess. And also I had to mention this, that the Doctor early in the story flips a coin, a double-headed Altarian dollar, which is the currency that's found in Douglas Adams' The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
I read that, and I thought that was very cool.
So yours truly gets another Douglas Adams connection on Doctor Who. I was very happy about that. I'm indulging myself a little bit there. All right. And if you're wondering about Ramsay the Vortisaur in the story, he's around for 3 more stories, but then leaves in Minuet in Hell, which also features the Brigadier, by the way. So we have the 8th Doctor meeting the Brigadier in that story. But poor Ramsay doesn't stay around too long. But, those Vortisaurs, I guess, are pretty pricey to keep fed.
Yeah. And not as nice as Tracy, I'm assuming. Give him a golf ball and he's happy.
Yes.
Yeah. Tracy. I love Tracy. All right. So, in honor of the Triskeli, we're going to have 3 topics. Because, Triskelion, 3. All right. So if you get that. So we're going to do 3 topics. Topic number 1, I had to title this one, Memoirs of an Edwardian Adventuress. Which is, so we've got to talk about the 8th Doctor and Charley. The 8th Doctor, we start off the story, he's traveling by himself, kind of noting that all the shelves in the TARDIS control room, that nice little library that he's got, complete disarray, when, of course, it's Doctor Who, everything suddenly goes to hell.
Right. And he's looking for the TARDIS manual of all things. It's like, Doctor, how many times have you thrown that out the window, out into the vortex?
Well, I have to think that the TARDIS manual, maybe the
regenerates?
TARDIS... that no matter how many times the Doctor gets rid of the TARDIS manual, the TARDIS itself will just kind of grow another one.
And every time it changes, the TARDIS changes, it updates it automatically.
Yeah.
So, yes.
And it kind of explains why the TARDIS manual never looks the same over the years. Because maybe the TARDIS manual regenerates as well, I guess.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or changes with the desktop theme.
Yeah, that's true. Or, kind of like the sonic screwdrivers, when they kind of pop out of the console, that, just like that, the TARDIS manuals are always different too. But anyway, so obviously the 8th Doctor goes on this adventure and happens to literally run into her, rounding a corner, Charley Pollard, who's a bit of a stowaway on the R101. So Holly, since you're our wonderful special guest companion, why don't we start with you first? And why don't you share your thoughts on the return of Paul McGann in the story as the 8th Doctor, and also your thoughts on the introduction of Charley?
I loved having McGann back as the 8th Doctor, and it's like he didn't miss a beat from the movies. And meeting Charley, it was almost kind of like a little bit with Sarah Jane, how she kind of surreptitiously sneaks her way in as a reporter and meets the Doctor. Charley's being a stowaway and dressing up as a boy and to continue her adventures and hoping she doesn't get busted. And hello, Doctor.
Yeah, I thought it was a really nice introduction. Go ahead.
Yeah. And I also love the nods to Agatha Christie, not knowing that X number of years later, we'd be actually having the Doctor meet Agatha Christie.
Yep. Yeah, it's a nice little tradition that, over the years that every so often you get an Agatha Christie reference on Doctor Who. Obviously, no better story than Unicorn and the Wasp, where like you said, the 10th Doctor finally gets to meet Agatha Christie. So, and Jesse, how about you? What are your thoughts about McGann taking into context that he hadn't played the Doctor for 5 years at this point, and then also what you thought of Charley's introduction, her origin story, if you will.
So he's so smooth. That's my initial reaction. Is he's such a smooth Doctor?
Yes, he is.
Very.
As I'm showing off my Paul McGann T-shirt.
Nice.
He's smart. Now, my nitpick is he has a little too much cliche of saying modern 20th century cliches, the sayings that, and all his library were Earth books. So I would have.
It is his favorite planet.
I know. I'm just saying, it would have been, and every once in a while, I think the modern series does, when they're talking about something, they'll throw in some made up historical event or another, a book from a different planet. I just really enjoy spending time with this Doctor. He's very sharp. He seems to be intuitive, understands what people are saying, and then understands what they're not saying. He doesn't suffer fools, but unlike Colin Baker's Doctor or even Sylvester McCoy, he's nicer about it, yet at the same time just as cold, right?
Yes.
Like,
he can do the polite put down.
Yes, and I really like that. Charley was interesting. I was frustrated with the mystery of her.
Okay.
I felt like I understood that, okay, just because they're giving us a mystery now and they're going to show it to us later. But I would have liked to know a little bit more about her, would have liked to, but I think that's a good thing, right? Like, I'm frustrated that I want to know more, which would lead me to, at the time, buying the second box or the third,
They can't give it all to you all at once,
yes.
otherwise you won't buy the rest, right?
She's basically, Charlotte's kind of like the Impossible Girl 1.0. Clara is 2.0.
Yeah. And I was a little confused. I had to go back and listen to her introduction a couple times because it seemed like it came out of nowhere. Like, all of a sudden she's supposed to be this character, and then no, she isn't that character. She isn't the passenger. It's Charlotte. And I thought that was a little abrupt, and that might have been just because I haven't listened to this multiple times. But right. Charley is very likable. She is a very modern companion. I thought she was smart. I thought she had enough spunk. I like spunk, unlike Lou Grant. And so I was happy with both of them. And as I talked about before, this is actually a pretty complex story. If nothing else to show, look at how many guest casts you went through, Charles. Like, often on audio drama, you've got the Doctor, the companion, and you may have other three voices.
2 or 3.
Yeah. And this is a full-fledged episode. Production. Yeah, really nice. How about you, Charles?
Yeah, obviously, and then I know I keep talking about this, but back in 2001, this was, I was taking everything in of McGann's return, and obviously I was very excited. But I was surprised at, like I believe Holly and you mentioned, that he just kind of just jumps right in. Almost like he never took time off during those 5 years. It felt like, he kind of picked right up from the TV movie. At least it sounded to me like he did. And I was very pleasantly surprised by that. And, he's very energetic. he loves his, name dropping of historical figures. And that was something that was kind of carried over from the TV movie, that this doctor is a name dropper.
Mm-hmm.
But just it seems like he's more relaxed in his performance. Maybe it's because, hey, this is McGann 5 years on with a little bit more mileage from the TV movie. Maybe he's had some time to think about how he wanted to do his doctor. Maybe he wanted to do it a little differently from the TV movie. But he seems more comfortable. He seems more relaxed. And as a result, I think he's much more entertaining. He gets some great lines in this. And then once he's introduced to Charley, they bump into each other. There's an instant chemistry there. That just really is the core essence of this story. And you see how great they're going to be as traveling companions going forward. And, because Charley, she had stowed away on the R101 because she wanted some excitement in her life. She wanted to avoid this date. And that she was, this guy that she was supposed to meet up with. And so she stows away after kind of getting this other guy named Simon Murchford drunk, taking his uniform and posing as him as one of the stewards on the R101. That's how she sneaks aboard. But she's quickly found out. And that's where the fun and the chaos ensues.
And, one of the points you made, Charles, is think about it. This isn't a character that he had been doing 3 or 4 years, and then the show got canceled and brought back. He had done one TV movie. Right. So this is not a lot.
Essentially a 4-episode story from the classic era.
And to be able to get back in character so quickly, as I used it, so smooth. He feels like the Doctor. He doesn't like, oh, here's another character playing this guy. I mean, he feels like the Doctor. And it's just really good to see how quickly he did that. And it does make it a comfortable, like you have that comfort of a really good, like a beloved novel or a beloved movie, or I love this TV show. I'm back in this TV show and I get to watch it. I'm seeing all my old characters and old friends, and this is back on.
Or a series of books where you've read a couple, and you kind of know what you want to see or want to read about, and you get the next book in the series, and it's everything that you wanted, and then some. And that's the way I kind of feel about this.
I think that is the perfect example because I used to read a lot of I used to every month, whenever there was a Star Trek novelization, I picked it up. And it was like, it's comfort reading. You didn't have to think very hard. You immediately knew the characters.
Especially if it was written by Peter David, if you're me.
Yes, exactly. And then, yes. And there are mystery novels. There are series. People like, that,
or Doctor Who novels by Paul Cornell, if you're me.
Yeah, there are where like Lawrence Block writes books, or the Spencer for Hire books, the Spencer books. You knew what a Spencer book was with Robert Parker, and it was just easy to slip into like a comfortable sweater. Versus if you
or a Dresden Files novel by Jim Butcher.
And so there's other books you get where you don't know the characters, and it takes you a little while to get comfortable. Doesn't mean you don't enjoy the novel, and you go, gosh, I was really surprised how good this was. But it takes you a little bit to adjust. This felt that you're the perfect example. This felt like the latest book in a series you love, and you're picking up right where the author left you before.
Yeah, and I think Alan Barnes does a great job giving McGann a lot of great lines. Getting him to be the Doctor, to do the eccentric stuff like it starts off in Barnes kind of, and I think this is kind of a noticeable thing from the earlier Big Finish audios, like this one from 2001, is where they did try to kind of forcibly describe what's going on because it's audio, as opposed to just kind of letting the story play out and leave it up to the listener's imagination. So there are some kind of forcibly, when the doctor's like, oh, well, that's thing I did to the TARDIS didn't work. Well, I guess I'll have to try and do this instead. And he would be a little bit more overly descriptive than he needed to be. But again, I think, this was just still kind of Big Finish in its infancy, figuring out these Doctor Who audios and how to tell them.
Though I am glad that they didn't go into too much description about the bite that Frayling had gotten.
Oh yeah, that was good. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the big revelations in this comes toward the end, where Charley, who was supposed to die on the R101, and this becomes a very important plot point in her saga going forward and her interaction with the Eighth Doctor going forward. This is a very important storyline going on. And the Doctor, knows that the web of time, of course it's Doctor Who, so he's all about, we can't disrupt the web of time. Well, here's Charley, who he's kind of rescued from the R101 disaster, and has her join him on the TARDIS and starts traveling with her. But it becomes this kind of very private drama that the Eighth Doctor knows that Charley should have died in that wreckage. And therefore, something isn't quite right as a result. Right. And it's something that weighs on him going forward. So Jesse, I want to ask you, start with you on this one. So what did you make of that revelation?
So that certainly was one of the mysteries. And what confused me a little bit is if I had, once again, I'm nitpicking, right? Because I love the show. It wasn't clear to me why the Doctor decided to, quote unquote, rescue her, to why he decided to let her travel with him. Like, one minute he's talking about, the web of time. And once again, you and I have talked many times, Charles, time cannot be written except when it can be written, right?
Or it needs to be rewritten for the purposes of the story. Yes.
Absolutely. So I was a little, and then I ran with it, and I know, okay, there's going to be a payoff later on why. And then I did a little look on the internet to kind of talk a little bit about
cheated.
Well, no, yeah. But so I'd love for you.
I'm sorry.
I'm just teasing. I don't blame you, but I'm just teasing you.
So did you? And if I knew we were going to do the whole series,
yeah.
I wouldn't have done that, right?
Right.
So can you?
Well, maybe now we would have done the whole series, but now you've ruined it.
Damn it! So Holly, Charles,
it's all your fault.
Why? Can you give me why you think the Doctor decided to not to have her travel with him?
Holly, do you want to talk about respond to that first?
Yeah, I'm thinking it's his relationship with Charley is the opposite side of the coin of the Seventh Doctor's relationship with Ace. Because he was kind of manipulative with Ace, and then this comes up, so I'm thinking he's trying to make amends and not be so manipulative. I mean, that's just me. And he's like really okay, I can do better this time around.
So he's feeling guilty over his treatment of Ace, and so to kind of try to make amends and ease his own conscience.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
that's interesting. The way I saw it was
he doesn't push her away as much.
No, he doesn't. I mean, they get along. It's a completely different dynamic than the Seventh Doctor and Ace, because the Seventh Doctor, true to Ace's nickname, was the professor, and she was the student. He was the teacher. She learned from him, but the Eighth Doctor and Charley, it's a much more of a friendship. Mm-hmm. They're more on equal footing, even though obviously the Doctor is the Doctor, and she's from the 20th century England. So it's a little different, but it feels more. It doesn't feel so like mentor-student. It feels more like, hey, we're companions, we're friends, and we're traveling, and which is the way I think it should be in a lot of ways. But
as I said, a very modern companion.
A very
doctor
modern era. Yeah,
yeah.
It is. And now, again, this is before the modern era. So this may be Russell T Davies kind of picking up a few things from Big Finish audios in his depiction of the Ninth Doctor and Rose, for example. But the way I saw it was more the Eighth Doctor. He's seen so much death. And he knew that a lot of people, obviously were destined to die on the R101. But he quickly developed this fondness for Charley. And he didn't want to see her perish. And so maybe he didn't try as hard. He keeps talking about, well, it's my job as a Time Lord. I should do, should I go back and drop her off back on the R101 and leave her to die? But he can't. He's not that person. He's not that heartless. At least this incarnation isn't. Sixth Doctor, maybe a little bit, probably would have. First Doctor maybe would have done that. But this incarnation, no, I don't see it. I don't think he's that cruel. And I don't think he can be that emotionally detached. So enough to even do the right, what his responsibilities as a Time Lord, he separates that. He's too personally involved now with her, and so he's not going to let her go easily. But by that same token, because he makes this decision to let her continue traveling with him, and therefore potentially causing disastrous effects by taking her out of the web of time, in a sense, and making her this oddity in the universe. This unique being that it makes it more risky for him going forward, and eventually, yes, there are consequences. I won't spoil them here for the benefit of people that haven't listened to the audios and kind of want to maybe use this as a starting point, but there are consequences. Now there are a ways away for that big payoff, but it's something that is addressed every so often on the show, and it is a kind of lingering concern between them. So that's the way I see it, anyway. All right. Anything else about the Eighth Doctor and Charley before we move on?
No, I'm good.
Anybody want to talk about? All right. Topic number 2. Let's talk about Lord Tamworth, Lieutenant Colonel Frayling, or Lieutenant Commander Frayling, depending on your Anglo or American take on everything. And let's talk about Peter Rathbone, who is a rather shady character, and especially at the end of the story. And
well,
so I
let's
want to get your
face it,
thoughts.
all three of them were kind of shady.
To various degrees. Lord Tamworth at least kind of, he had some ulterior motives at the beginning, but he tried to do right, I think, by the Triskeli in the end of the story. So I think of the 3, he was probably the most redeemable, I guess. But Jesse, we'll start with you first on this one. What did you make of these characters?
So it was very interesting. As I said, you had to pay a little attention because you got a little more voices. Very proper British, this military
officers.
Yeah, a lot of talk about your duty to king and country. At one point, right, he's like, did you serve? Well, you've been brought back up again, private I can't remember exactly the character right, but he makes them back in, and you know from the very beginning that they're hiding something, because there's all this discussion about the engineer and the ship designer, like, you made me add all this weight, and why is it here, and what's going on, and these are questions you shouldn't be asking, and why do we have this locked room? And so it was this, you knew something fishy was going on And it was a great mystery to kind of see, okay, what is this going to happen? What is going to go? And to see their reaction to not only when we get the surprise of the alien reveals, not only the one that on the ship, but the bigger ship and all the other things, right. How they interacted with each other, and also watching them interact with the Doctor, right? The idea that they assume he's a German spy, right? And
well, that's the cover he gives them.
Yes,
yeah.
And
he feeds into that.
Yeah, which I think is very neat.
Dr. Johann Schmidt.
Right, it's John Smith, right? John Smith.
Yeah, the German version of John Smith.
Yeah, which was really funny. I thought that was very nicely done. So, I these were complex, really filled out characters, which made for, once again, the reason why I liked the story so much, because I wasn't sure what they were going to do. And as Holly mentioned, they all, to a certain degree, had ulterior motives and were not the best, but a couple of them did have a couple of moments. So, yeah, really good stuff.
Yeah.
And Holly, how about you? What was your thoughts on these characters?
I mean, Tamworth, he made no bones, but then, trying to backpedal and save his own skin. And just when we are introduced to the Triskelions, how that one of them just instantly connects with Charley. It's just like, okay, that's something that you need to pay attention to, which I also think is probably another reason why the Doctor's just like, okay, she's worth trying to save and find out more about. Because normally I don't think, to me, to have that instant connection to somebody that's not of your own kind, that's saying something.
Yeah, it is. It is. And so Lord Tamworth, we find out that apparently sometime prior to the story, there was a crash, and he comes across the Engineer Prime, as we find out later, and
the UK's version of Roswell.
pretty much, yeah. The Triskeli craft, it apparently quickly disintegrates. So, but they still have the Engineer Prime, and all this as we find out through the course of the story is Lord Tamworth trying to return the Engineer Prime to his people, and as a result, he requests all these modifications to the R101. That like, hey, we're going to have some extra equipment on here, extra weight, like you were talking about, Jesse, and we're going to go up to higher altitudes, apparently like 3 times what they were planned for.
She's not the Millennium Falcon guy.
No, she'll hold together. Okay, baby, hold together.
We don't have Scotty on board for an engineer either.
I'm giving her all she's got, Captain. Yeah. So there you go, a Star Wars and a Star Trek reference, just boom, right there. There you go. Where else can you hear that but on this podcast, right? So, Tamworth has it. His ulterior motive is that, hey, I want to meet up with these aliens, these Triskeli, and and as he finds out that eventually that. And we'll talk more about the Triskeli here in a minute, but that they're looking for a lawgiver, and Tamworth actually kind of campaigns and says, hey, look, I can do this for you people, and I can be this for you, and then once he finally gets that opportunity. He basically says, well, let's just get rid of the position, and I'll just keep advising you for as long as I can, as long as I'm alive. How's that? So with someone who started off a bit sinister, keeping this mysterious passenger in a cabin 43, and kind of being a little abusive to his junior officers and also to Frayling, the ship's designer, that it turns out that, out of all three of them, between him, Frayling, and Rathbone, he's the one that comes off the best at the end of the story, I think.
Yeah, he redeems himself.
Frayling basically comes off early as a worrywart, worried that Tamworth is going to completely blow up the R101, which he doesn't, but Rathbone does, as it turns out. And then Rathbone, of course, is just a completely irredeemable character, right? He's he starts off being, as we find out through the course of the story, being controlled, or at least encouraged, nudged by the Uncreator Prime. Then ultimately, when he gets the opportunity to get a hold of some alien technology, some alien weaponry, he's so desperate to do that to get a hold of this technology that he doesn't pay attention and doesn't realize that his actions actually cause ultimately the wreck of the R101.
Mm-hmm.
So, any thoughts on Rathbone in the story?
You summed it up well. Like I said, they're pretty complex. It was really well done, and as I said, kind of surprisingly dense for an audio drama. But it wasn't like you're confused. Like I didn't go, okay, Charles, I understand what the heck's going on in this one, right? Okay. And I have done that in the past on episodes.
But you were able to follow this one. And did when the first time that either of you listened to this, did you know about the R101 crash, or is this something like me that you learned after listening to the story?
It was something that I had learned after the fact, because I'm just like, okay, did they just rename the R101 and, are they basing it off of the Hindenburg? Yeah, because even there's a little bit of a brief mention of the Hindenburg.
Yes.
Yeah. Apparently it's on the drawing table apparently in this story.
Right. Yeah.
So I mean, this is obviously, it's a British airship, so obviously we didn't get a lot of learn of that in our U.S. history class here in the States. So this is kind of something that apparently, established in history. So again, it's kind of a historical, but it's more of a modern historical where we have to work in the aliens into the premise, and we can't just talk about how the ship exploded, the airship exploded. All right, moving on. Then topic number 3, let's talk about Engineer Prime, Uncreator Prime, and the Triskeli are aliens, and we find out, interestingly, that they are a triad society, that they have 3 groups. We have the engineers, which are essentially the brains of the outfit. We have the Uncreators, which are the warriors, the chaos bringers, the kind of the emotions of the group, and the lawgiver, who essentially is the free will, as we're told, that kind of keeps the two groups from having more power over the other. That kind of keeps the balance in this triad. So Holly, let's start with you on this one and get your thoughts. What did you make of our aliens in this one? I don't want to say alien big bads, because they're not all big bads in this.
Interesting, and I like how they were kind of vague, where they didn't kind of describe what they looked like. They were able to kind of leave it to your imaginations, and just that you could, all 3 of them almost seems like they had to function together, and if one piece came out of kilter, that there was going to be some problems. So, I mean, really nicely done.
Yeah, I thought so. And Jesse, how about you? What did you make of the Triskeli?
So one of the things that made me think of is in 1972, Isaac Asimov did The Gods Themselves, which was a scientific novel about an alien society that had multiple parts that all joined together. And it was actually kind of surprising that it had been years since he had written a novel, and he won the Hugo and the Nobel Award for that. So that's the first thing I thought of, that is the idea, right, that there are 3 unique another thought of Babylon 5, right? The different castes.
Yes.
And so
in the Minbari, yeah.
Yeah. So I thought this was it was a pretty complex alien. Once again, I like the idea of them kind of pushing against each other and trying to, because they're each being their own nature, and how this middle person changed it. Also, pretty good vocal effects when they're, hello,
yes.
Hi,
yes.
Charles. It is good to see you, Holly.
To help you distinguish between the engineers and the uncreators.
Yeah, I thought that was really well done.
The uncreators were more gruff.
Yes.
More warlike, at least sounded more aggressive.
Yeah, and the engineers sounded very pleasing and like they would be.
Passive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And when they mentioned the uncreation, is that just like, okay, in my mind, it's like, okay, are you talking purgatory or are you talking just like a blank, dark void and it's just you and you haven't a clue as to what's going on?
Well, if you think about it, uncreation, that kind of implies the opposite of creation, right? And what's the opposite of creation? Destruction.
Right.
So that's all they're about, that's their jam, as it turns out. I thought it was very interesting the way we had this society, and that there was a balance in this, and that apparently we find out that the engineers and the uncreators are essentially looking for a new lawgiver to apparently, because apparently the old original lawgiver is on the verge of death, as we find out. So they kind of they deliberately select 3 people to have this meeting with, Tamworth, Frayling, and the Doctor, and essentially Frayling is kind of like the engineer of the group, literally, because he's an engineer, right? And Tamworth is kind of more like the uncreator. He's more of a more warlike, and then so they can kind of consider the Doctor to be the lawgiver they want, and the Doctor's just like, no, I'm busy. I'm kind of busy for the next millennium or infinity or what have you. Yeah. So I got things to do.
You haven't heard from Gallifrey that I'm the de facto president that's in absentia?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. But yeah. So the Doctor isn't really down with this, and then ultimately we find out that the uncreators have using Rathbone kind of manipulated events so that they could cause, basically put everything in a situation where they could declare war. That the Triskeli and the humans are now at war, and so that they could kill everybody. And thankfully, that doesn't work out. That plan doesn't work out, and this is where Tamworth agrees to kind of advise them at that point. So, and then everybody else just kind of shuttles back off to Triskeli, their homeworld, and that's pretty much it for them, leaving only Rathbone to have to deal with.
And I like the idea that there is this where they can't read the Doctor because he is different than the rest of them. I always like that when we were reminded that the Doctor is Gallifreyan, is different than normal. So I thought that was a nice little moment, especially with, the whole half-human thing. This is kind of pushing that away real quickly.
Right. Well, and I think the Doctor even makes a comment, too, that I'm not human, so that's why you can't tell if memory serves.
Yes, I think you're right.
Something to that effect. Yeah, I think so. I think you're right, Holly. I think you're absolutely right. All right. Anything else about the story that we overlooked? Holly, Jesse,
no,
Bueller?
I
liked it a lot. I agree.
All right. So favorite quotes. Anybody got any favorite quotes they want to share from this story?
Oh, I've got a couple. That's the problem with fifth-dimensional predators. They make five-dimensional bite marks.
That's a good one. Although I would have pointed out that they're fourth-dimensional because fourth-dimensional is time, fifth-dimensional is space.
True.
Just saying. Just saying.
And then we're German spies, and then Charlie mentioned something about a plan. He's like, I don't have a clue what I'm doing. Typical Doctor.
That's funny.
A plan?
That's
I
funny.
don't have a plan. That's my plan.
Yeah. I'm making up as I go along, okay? And hope that it's a plan. All right. Jesse, do you have any quotes?
I did not. As I was
Okay.
listening to this, I did not write things down, but it was a clever. So I'm looking forward to hearing yours.
Okay, I got a few here. The doctor talking earlier early in the story, talking to himself, saying, "Doctor, you really must stop talking to yourself at times like this. Terrible habit. First sign of madness," they say. And Charley's encounter with the doctor, her first encounter with the doctor, running around that corner and bumping into each other. And Charley goes, "Oh!" and gasps afterward, audibly. And the doctor responds, "Is that the greetings over with?" And Charley goes, "What?" And the doctor replies quickly, "I can do this too." "How? That's good, isn't it? Geronimo taught me that." And Charley starts off going, "How'd?" and gets interrupted by the doctor saying, "There, you've got the hang of it already."
Yes, very
Paul
nice.
McGann, just, it's perfection in that. Probably my favorite exchange of his since the TV movie, when there's this moment in the TV movie, if you remember, where, as far as I'm concerned, this is when Paul McGann became the doctor.
Yes.
When he's looking down on the ground after having just kissed Grace, and he goes, "These shoes."
Yeah.
And Grace is like, "What? These shoes, they fit perfectly, yes." And he starts running around all excitedly around the grassy area. And I'm just like, that's it. That's the doctor. That's what I've been missing. That's it. So I just kind of got that vibe from that little scene. It was such a wonderful way of these two to meet one another. And then also Chief Steward Weeks, where he's leaving the cabin, and Charley and the doctor are kind of hiding out in the cabin after he leaves. And Chief Steward Weeks says, "Oh, have it your own way. No skin off my rosy nose." And Charley responds, "Well, you got that right, Chief Steward Weeks. It's redder than Mr. Lennon's pajamas." And the doctor responds to that, going, "Red? Lennon? No. There was sort of mauve when I took the train with him from Switzerland to Petrograd. Remarkable mind, Lennon. Terrible at tiddlywinks." I enjoyed that quite a bit. And then lastly, I got to do this. This is a great quote. The doctor talking to Frayling, saying, "Breathe in deep, Lieutenant Commander. You too, Charley. You feel that pounding in your heart, that tightness in the pit of your stomach, the blood rushing to your head. Do you know what that is? That's adventure. That's the thrill and the fear and the joy of stepping into the unknown. That's why we're all here, and that's why we're alive."
I did want to bring up one. I just noted
great
my
read
notes.
by Paul McGann.
Yes, great. I did think it was interesting, right? He mentions Mary Shelley and Lord Byron.
Yes.
And I'm like, okay, we're going to retcon that because later the doctor actually meets him. So.
Yeah, one of the things that Big Finish did was before he meets Charley, apparently the Eighth Doctor was traveling with Mary Wollstonecraft. Later Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley.
Oh, nice.
And they actually, Big Finish did like a 3 part series of adventures. And I'm trying to remember the actress's name that plays her. Something Cox. I can't remember her name, but it was a really great series of audios, and I highly recommend it.
Julie Cox.
Julie Cox, that's it. Yeah, she was in the Dune TV miniseries.
Okay.
Army
as
of
Princess
Death is
Irulan.
one of them. I know for sure.
Yeah, but they're really good. So I recommend checking those out if you're kind of curious about the Eighth Doctor traveling with Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley. What's your rating, guys? What's your rating for this one? Holly, we'll start with you.
9 out of 10 Agatha Christie novels.
Very nice. You really like this one. Jesse, how about you?
Well, I am similar, but mine was 9 out of 10 missing last pages.
Ooh, nice. Yes, because the Roger Ackroyd book had the ending torn out of the book.
You guys are both on the same page, I guess.
Yes.
All right.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, you see what I did there? I was wondering if anybody's going to catch that. Well, I'm going to have to make it unanimous then, so I'll give it 9 as well. So we're all in sync on this one. 9 out of 10 disastrous dirigibles.
Oh, very nice. Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine, Charles, going back, and I know you mentioned this, that you're tired. We hope our audience isn't tired, but I can just imagine you're little Charles, like you had sent off your box tops to the Kellogg's to get your toy, and so you get the CD, and you're like getting ready to listen to it, and at the same time, please don't disappoint me. Please don't disappoint me. And it doesn't, right? I mean, this is everything you could have wanted in a new Doctor Who episode.
Well, to be fair, it was 2001, so I was a little older than that.
No, I'm saying like young Charles.
I was 32 years old when this came out. Okay?
I'm saying like young Charles when you sent off stuff to Kellogg's, like I did to the,
I never did that.
Really?
Yeah, because I'm not as old as you. I'm not as old as you, Jesse.
Okay, yes, I certainly did, and you could not understand why it's not there the next day.
I remember sending in the backs of the Mattel Star Wars tops to get a clear ghost Anakin Skywalker back in the
there you
back
go.
in the day.
Okay.
There you go. See that I can get behind.
Yes.
That's Star Wars. That's definitely my wheelhouse. All right. Reverse the polarity. For the sake of time, I'm not going to run through the whole thing, but I want to recommend, if you liked Storm Warning and you're looking for something from the classic era along those lines, why not try Terror of the Vervoids, which was the third serial from season 23 in 1986, written by the dubious Pip and Jane Baker. So heads up there. But this is, during the Trial of the Time Lord season, where the Doctor's on trial by the Valeyard and presents evidence of his actions on the space liner Hyperion 3. So essentially like it's an outer space R101 and in his own personal future. And this is where he also, we get the first introduction of his new companion, Mel. So kind of like with Charley, we get the introduction of a new companion, and got the Vervoids essentially causing havoc on the ship and killing some people, and the ship's going to be in mortal danger and has to be rescued from a black hole, and yada yada. And eventually at the end of the episode, we go back to the courtroom, and the Valeyard kind of calls out the Doctor for committing genocide on the Vervoids. So that's basically how that wraps up. So if you did enjoy Storm Warning, and I hope you did, because it's a fun little audio. Really enjoy it a lot. Obviously, by the 3 sets of 9s, our own Triskeli.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
That I think you might be in the mood for Terror of the Vervoids.
Very
so
nice.
There you go. All right. Before we get into it, we don't have any listener feedback, but I do have some Series 13 news that I want to discuss.
Okay. Well, before you do that, Charles,
yes,
we've kind of done this a couple of times, and I want to tell, and I don't know if the audience cares, but I know, and you may not care, but as I told you, I started a new job, and one of my coworkers is going through the Doctors for the first time ever.
Oh,
nice.
And
so he comes and he goes, okay, I'm not sure about this Matt Smith guy. And he's like, and he didn't know Karen Gillan. Like, I know her from the Marvel universes. I didn't know she was in Doctor Who. So he's gone through the Venice vampires, who weren't vampires, as he's telling me.
The Vampires of Venice, yeah.
He says, I've done the Weeping Angels again. And he's like, okay, I've accepted the fact this is a brand new show. And I love this character version of the Doctor. So he says, it took me a little bit to get used to it, but he's really enjoying it. So I'm cautiously waiting till he gets Vincent and the Doctor, because that's only a couple episodes away, and I believe it is going to blow him away. So, but he is enjoying it a lot.
And if that doesn't, then probably the Pandorica opens the Big Bang will.
Oh, yes. He's just going to go crazy. Yes.
Yes.
So anyway,
all right.
Every couple of weeks I want to give you my newbie Whovian coworkers an update. So
okay.
So news, please, Charles.
Back to the Series 13 news. before Jesse wanted to chime in with that. According to the Metro, apparently executive producer Chris Chibnall, showrunner, has confirmed that Series 13 will only be 8 episodes instead of the planned 11 because of, the coronavirus and all the COVID protocols that they're having to go through. So we're going to lose 3 episodes, presumably 2 from the regular season, and then I'm guessing we'll also lose the holiday special, whatever that is. So unless they just take out 3 and then kind of merge the holiday special with the season. Filming apparently recently began, so filming is underway, and it's going to take place over the next 10 months, with Series 13 arriving in late 2021. So that's some good news that we don't have to wait until 2022 for Series 13. But the bad news is that we lose 3 episodes because of Shakes Fist coronavirus.
Did they see if the other episodes are going to be longer or they're going to be the regular time?
Yeah, they have not, so we don't know. Hopefully they'll be longer, but we'll see.
Well, I know back in the day, we wanted more than 10 episodes of Game of Thrones, and the guys had said, we can't make more than 10 episodes in a 12-month calendar, right? So I am certainly disappointed, but I also understand that this taking the extra time to keep everyone safe makes a little sense. So this is 8 additional episodes.
And if they want to get the episodes out in 2021 as opposed to making us wait until 2022 for a couple more.
Like to March or April of 2022, right? Versus
and
I assume that is 8 in addition to we are supposed to get one in December or January this year, right? So that doesn't count that one.
No, it doesn't count that one.
Okay.
So we are getting Revolution of the Daleks sometime, probably New Year's, I'm guessing. And then we'll have to wait, I'm guessing, until October of 2021 to get Series 13. And we'll get 8 episodes then.
Yeah, so all of October, all of November,
Yeah. So we'll get a couple of months worth of episodes. But at least we're getting something. And
exactly.
And obviously, it's not like other shows haven't been affected by the coronavirus as well. Like the Arrowverse shows, which a lot of them were truncated last season because of the coronavirus. And are having to start later, and they won't be coming back until January or February of 2021 because, again, of the coronavirus. So
that is perfectly understandable, and it makes sense. And
it's disappointing, sure,
but I would rather them be safe and do things right.
Yeah.
So absolutely.
So I just want to give everybody a heads up that I noticed that today and found that. So it's on the Metro, so it's it's out there. So again, we didn't get any lesser feedback. So David K. Proctor, Dave, you dropped the ball this week. I'm calling you out, Dave.
I take it they didn't hear the audio drama.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Holly at least showed up.
Yes, she did.
Yes.
So Holly, you're off the hook.
Yes.
But Dave, you're on notice, Dave. But if you want to write to us, please do. Write to us at nextstopeverywheresmg@gmail.com. That's nextstopeverywhere SMG for Southgate Media Group at gmail.com, or you can reach us on Twitter at nextstopsmg on Twitter, Facebook, Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast, or Instagram at Next Stop Everywhere podcast. And Holly, how about you? Where can they find you out there in the interwebs?
Well, you can find me on the Five-ish Fangirls podcast, our website, the5ishfangirls.com, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and myself personally, HollyMac_79 on Twitter and Instagram.
And please follow her and start listening to, if you haven't already, shame on you, but if you listen to the Five-ish Fangirls podcast, because they're all wonderful people, and we definitely want to encourage our listeners to give them some love right back, because they're so kind to us here on the podcast. So, Jesse, how about you? Where can they reach you?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Jesse Jackson. I may be tweeting a little less political stuff now, so you may be more happy following me.
Yes.
You can certainly hear me talking music on Set Listing Bruce, and coming up this week, I talked to Andy Parks, who is the writer a few years ago of Dynamite's Long Ranger and Tonto series. He did a series of that, and he's also an inker when Kevin Smith and Phil Hester were doing Green Arrow. So
Interesting.
So he is a big Springsteen fan, so he joined me. So that's like my third or fourth comic book writer artist that's a Springsteen fan. So that's a whole subnet. And so please check those out. Charles.
Yes.
I am not an animal. I am a fan of the Ghostwood podcast.
Well, yes, I'm glad to hear that. I'm so glad to hear that. So, of course, me, at Charles Skaggs on Twitter, at Charles Skaggs on Instagram, Facebook, of course, Charles Skaggs in Hilliard, Ohio, and my blog of Geeky Things.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn good coffee and hot. We're talking about all the stuff we talk about here on Next Stop Everywhere, Doctor Who, Torchwood, Sarah Jane Adventures, Big Finish Audios, and more, and all kinds of comic book sci-fi news of my other podcasts for Southgate Media, including the Phantom Zone podcast, where currently DJ Nick, friend of the show, and I are going through The Boys Season 2, and we just completed episode 4 of that, so we're almost halfway through the season already. Having a lot of fun doing that, so I hope you guys check that out. Titan Talk is kind of on hiatus right now, but hopefully Jesse or Nick or both will be back to talk Titan Season 3 and Doom Patrol Season 3 whenever we get news of that. And then, of course, the aforementioned Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast that apparently Jesse Jackson is a fan of, where we recently talked The Elephant Man, the 1980 film by David Lynch. I had a lot of fun doing that. It was a pretty long one, but a pretty in-depth discussion. It's a very, it was nominated for 8 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director, with a superb, stellar cast, including a certain Sir John Hurt, that you may know as the War Doctor here on Doctor Who. So highly recommend you guys check that out if you're a big John Hurt fan like I am. And Zan and I might be cooking up something that may be showing up later this week. A little project we've been cultivating very slowly, percolating, if you will. And we're about ready to unleash it on the world. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to just leave it there. I'm going to tease it mysteriously for now. But you definitely want to stay tuned to either Zan's feed or my feed or the Southgate Media Group feed for more information.
Very nice.
Stay tuned, guys. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're doing this. All right. So with that little ominous bit of news, Holly, thank you so much for returning for this. I know you just talked with us last time, so it's wonderful to have you 2 weeks in a row here on the podcast.
Glad I could make it.
Yep. I'm going to be feeling a little left out that you're not here next week, I guess. But, I want to welcome you back whenever you want. We love having you on, and I thought you did a superb job, as always.
Yeah, we love having you on, Holly. It's always interesting and great to share your insights and give your thoughts, and you are absolutely a joy to podcast with, and you're a great person, and thank you so much for being part of this,
Thanks.
Doctor Who family of ours.
You have this lovely upbeat attitude, and it always makes me, you're always so kind when you write in, and I just get such a nice warm feeling whenever I talk to you.
Absolutely. Great.
All right. We love you. We love you here. All right. Jesse, thank you as always.
Yes, indeed, Charles.
Looking forward to next week as next time on Next Stop Everywhere, episode 209. And then we only have 91 more after this to get up to where the 5-ish fangirls are. So we're trying. We are going to be talking, as we head into the modern era at long last, Aliens of London / World War III.
Nice.
A two-parter from the Christopher Eccleston era, the 4th and 5th episodes of Series 1 in 2005, which, introduced the Slitheen and also introduced a certain Harriet Jones, PM Flydale North, and Toshiko Sato, future Torchwood member.
Yes.
So, and we're going to be doing that. Jesse and I are going to be discussing these 2 episodes with none other than DJ Nick, making his return to Next Stop Everywhere at long last. Finally got tired of doing all those Phantom Zone episodes with yours truly, I guess, and Titan Talk episodes. So we're definitely happy to have him back, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
As Nick returns to the podcast, because obviously if you've heard Nick, he's always on, and he's always wonderful to listen to.
I totally agree. Absolutely. It's going to be a blast.
Yes.
I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So, again, thank you, Holly. Thank you, Jesse. Everybody coming back next time, 209, Aliens of London, World War III, DJ Nick. I don't have to say any more. And we'll see you next time right here on Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye.